Tucker Carlson was recently a guest on Joe Rogan, and they talked about aliens and UFOs. Let's dive in. If you're new to the channel, y'all, and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. And please hit that like button, vetters. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support there. And of course, comment down below. What do you think about these clips that I'm going to show you about Tucker Carlson? I'm going to show you 4 clips. Let's dive in. All right, first clip lined up. I'll kind of give some context here. Again, link in the description. You can go check out the full interview. Again, we're going to look at 4 clips here. All right, first one is probably the most interesting one, if I'm being honest. It's right at the beginning of the podcast. It sort of just starts with a bang, in my opinion. If you're really into UFOs and kind of into the niche, information that's out there, one, you immediately know who Tucker Carlson is talking about, even though he's trying to keep it a secret because he brings up somebody, and you just understand sort of the relevance of it. So I'll explain that as we go. Let's listen.
So I got this from someone in the U.S. government who's well, look. Let me just start by saying I don't know anything, but.
I don't know anything either.
He sent me this. The above is 100% legit. I was read into this program but told never to tell anyone. It's now been released. As you can see, it began as a result of my old program, AATIP.
ATIP.
I signed a document saying I would never talk about Kona Blue and similar efforts. I can't believe the AARO would have released it. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, here's what we do know is that there's enough going on in the skies, but not just the skies, underwater, that the U.S. military has been forced to respond to it. So, like, move aircraft from one place to another because there are too many of these objects in the sky. That's actually happened. Chris Mellon just wrote a long piece about it. So it's real. The government is not controlling it. In fact, it's forcing the government, DOD, to respond. And we know that there is a real effort and has been underway for a long time to keep the public from knowing about it.
Okay. Yes. Let's kind of break this down a little bit. Let's watch it again, and I'll kind of go over it.
So I got this from someone.
So right here, you can see Kona Blue, right? Right here, Kona Blue. This part of I made a video on it, so I'll put a link in the description. And I had John Greenwald Jr. on yesterday. We spoke about that, so I'll put a link in the description for that if you want to hear his explanation for all of that. But basically, it was a perspective. That's the key word, in my opinion, at least according to the documents that got released. Prospective special access program to study essentially UFOs and, tangential topics such as remote viewing and, that sort of thing. But the key was perspective, that it got rejected for funding. It didn't actually happen. But pay attention to the clip.
In the U.S. government who's well, look, let me just start by saying I don't know anything. But he sent.
That just cracks me up. I appreciate Tucker sort of saying that, if I'm being honest. I say the same sort of things on here, so I get where he's coming from.
The above is 100% legit. I was read into this program but told never to tell anyone. It's now been released. As you can see.
I was told never to tell anyone about this. I was read into the program. Who's he talking about?
It began as a result of my old program, AATIP.
My old program, AATIP, or Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, otherwise known as ATIP.
I signed a document saying I would never talk about Kona Blue and similar efforts. I can't believe the AARO would have released it.
I signed a document saying I would never speak about it. I can't believe AARO, otherwise known as the All Domain Resolution Office, ERA, right? Sean Kirkpatrick, the DOD's office to study UFOs, the Pentagon's office. So who's he talking about? Lou Elizondo. So Lou Elizondo, I mean, this is kind of breaking news. Lou Elizondo is, and it's not an email because Tucker says he doesn't email. It's a text message. So clearly him and Tucker text. But so he's telling Tucker, hey, this program's real. I was read into it, and I can't believe Arrow released the documents about it. Let's break that down. One, it's real. I was read into it. What did you do? Is there operational paperwork? Are there reports about it? I'm sure now John Greenwald, who I had on yesterday, who's the master of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, asking for basically public records from our government. I'm sure he can request that now. Somebody can, right? Like, if Lou Elizondo was read into this program, read into it, what does that mean? That means it would have to be an active program to be read into it. Or was he read into the meeting that, hey, we're going to propose this? Is it a program if it gets rejected? Does that make sense? It's proposed. It's kind of like making a reservation at a hotel. Until you stay there, you didn't stay at the hotel. You made a reservation, right? So they kind of made a reservation, and the place had no vacancy, right? It was denied. Or what is he insinuating? Is he insinuating that it didn't get rejected? It became a full-fledged program. He was read into it, and it became operational. For how long? Is he still in the program? Right? Is Lou Elizondo still in Kona Blue? Because now we just found out right now, according to Tucker Carlson, that Lou Elizondo just text messaged him saying, I was read into Kona Blue. That's a real program. Right? And I was signed a document saying I would never talk about it. Yet here we are. Well, what's interesting is he's saying he signed a document to never talk about it and then talked about it. And then text Tucker Carlson about it. I'm just saying, I get that it became public information, but that doesn't mean you need to talk about it. You can still maintain, right, the parameters of the document you signed and not talk about it, even though it got released. Or did the document say if it becomes public knowledge, you're allowed to talk about it? I don't know. I'm just saying. And is it an active program, or was he saying he was just read into the program before it ever became a program? Would that even count? Does that constitute being in the program? I don't know. Just have a lot of questions. Very interesting. Very interesting. And he's clearly upset that Arrow released those documents, right? Which I can understand. If I was him in his position and what things that had happened, I would also probably be upset if that stuff wasn't supposed to come out and then it came out. And of course it comes out the day before Arrow's supposed to meet with Congress, right? I think that was kind of done to kind of embarrass these people, right? Embarrass the people who suggested that program. Kind of just show them, look at this nonsense they're throwing out. I think it was very coordinated. It's no coincidence that those two things happened back to back. Give me a break. That's just impossible. That's just not going to happen. They had that meeting set up with Congress, Arrow did, right, to present them information inside of a skiff, a secured compartmented information facility where they can exchange classified information or at least need to know information, private information not available to the public in a secure setting, right? And that just doesn't happen on a whim. You have a lot of Congress to coordinate their own schedules. That's set up probably months in advance, right? And then you're telling me they released the Kona Blue documents just randomly? They don't even release documents like that. Arrow hasn't. Arrow is so weird with what they do. Again, regardless of how you feel about the subject, Arrow, in my opinion, has not done a good job of doing what they're supposed to do. So anyway, let's move on to the next clip. That's the most interesting one, right? That's kind of a bombshell. I mean, Luis Elizondo is claiming he was in a UAP program. He's never claimed that before, besides ATIP. But that was to study, right? And Kona Blue, just interesting. I think that's the next leg of where they were trying to take ATIP, make it even more, reflective of what they were trying to do, And it just didn't get the funding. But again, or did it? So, all right, let's move on to the next clip here. Tucker Carlson tells Joe Rogan what he thinks UFOs are. Shout out to Skyfire News for these clips I'm using, by the way, on Twitter. I'll put links to them. But again, I'll put a link to the full interview with Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan. Here we go.
So they're from here, and they've been here for thousands of years, whatever they are. And it's pretty clear to me that they're spiritual entities, whatever that means. They're supernatural, and which is to say, supernatural means above the natural, above the observable nature. And they don't behave according to the laws of science as measured by people, and they've been here for a long time. And there's a ton of evidence they're under the ocean and under the ground. So, with that fact set, what do you conclude? So they're from here, and they...
Under the ground? What? What are we talking about under the ground? I don't know if I've heard that. Maybe I have. Under the ocean, okay, but under the ground. Well, they got little ant colonies under there? I don't understand. Like gophers? What? Is Critters? Is that a movie? Is that a real movie? Is that a documentary? Under the ground. Anyway, supernatural, right? That's interesting that he did. You see, this is what I mean when people use words and then you don't really know what they meant by them, the definition of whatever. So Tucker's been saying, spiritual, whatever, but he just means supernatural, above nature, right? So he doesn't necessarily mean, I think, what some people thought before, what we typically think. It's like there's a phenomenon existing and then it has 1,000 names that people attach to it. That's the truth, right? So that's interesting, but that's good that he clarified, right? What do y'all think of that description, supernatural? All right, next clip here.
U.S. servicemen have died as a result of contact with or being in the proximity of these vehicles. And we know that because there are a lot of suits working their way through the VA system.
Yeah?
Where families, can't get compensated for the deaths or injuries to loved ones.
Because it's all under wraps, top secret.
Well, that's just a fact, okay, that is happening. So if there's, I guess, when there are measurable physical effects of a phenomenon, we can say conclusively the phenomenon is real.
Right.
And so, yeah.
But it
is real. I mean, I guess we're sort of past the point of is it real? Yeah, it's real.
It's real in that there's these things that are moving in very bizarre ways, and they have these propulsion systems that violate what we know about propulsion systems.
U.S. servicemen have died.
Let's go over this again.
As a result of contact with or being in the proximity of these vehicles. And we know that because there are a lot of suits working their way through the VA system.
Yeah?
So he's saying that there are lawsuits working their way through the VA system of military members who have been hurt by UFOs or aliens? I've never heard of that. What are they putting in the suit? How do they know that that's attached to that? Does that make sense? And why would the gatekeepers allow anyone to file a lawsuit, right, for being injured from a UFO alien? They just, if they did get injured on a crash retrieval or something, on an experiment with technology or some sort of interaction, they're then going to be like, yeah, just go through the VA, go through the regular channels. I mean, that just seems highly unlikely. So I don't know what Tucker means by this. Maybe someone can add some clarification in the comments, because that's what I'm assuming he's saying. There's lawsuits from some sort of alien or ET interaction.
Where families, can't get compensated for the deaths or injuries to loved ones.
Because it's all...
I mean, we know that there's lawsuits like that, but is he meaning in reference to ET alien? That's what I'm confused about.
under wraps, top secret.
Well, that's just a fact, okay, that is happening. So if there's, I guess...
It's just a fact. I mean, again, what does he mean by that?
You know, when there are measurable physical effects of a phenomenon, we can say conclusively the phenomenon is real.
Right.
So, again, doesn't that sound like he's implying that physical effects from the phenomena have caused military members to be injured or death? Remember, he says death, right? And it sounds he's using it in a plural sense, so more than one, multiple families, multiple military members, all from the same missions. Where is this happening? How recent? Current? He says it's happening now, first of all, so current. But so there's evidence of these physical effects, right? He's saying it's a fact, right? And when you know that, then you know the phenomena is real. But are we connecting the two? You know, the effects and then the phenomena. What effects are we talking about? Like, there's so many questions here. My mind's, racing with questions for this.
And so, yeah.
But
it is. I mean, I guess we're sort of past the point of, like, is it real? Yeah.
Are we past the point of is it real? Are we past that point? What do y'all think? Tell me in the comments. Curious what everyone's going to say.
That's real.
It's real in that there's...
See, Joe comes in with it's real in that and kind of explain what is real exactly. What is the scope of what is real? Right? Because what does Tucker mean by it's real? And Joe wants to sort of say, well, it's stuff flying around. We don't know there's things happening, right? That's what's real. But what it isn't real yet. Like, that can't be defined. That's kind of what I get from Joe.
These things that are moving in very bizarre ways, and they have these propulsion systems that violate what we know about propulsion systems.
Yeah. All right, last clip here. They're going to talk about Gary Nolan and, get into some of these effects on humans. The phenomena, right? The physical effects, the sort of a little more context maybe to what Tucker was just talking about.
I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And,
you talking about Gary Nolan?
That's exactly who I'm talking about. He was effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's like independently rich. I mean, he flew to. I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell the story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, at Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years. Assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know, because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And it's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
The point is, people have died. What a way to end that clip. Pardon me. All right, let's go through that again. Let's break that down.
I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And,
you talking about Gary Nolan?
That's exactly who I'm talking about. He was effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's...
That's exactly who I'm talking about. The way Tucker delivered that.
An expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's like independently rich. I mean, he flew to. I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell the story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, at Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal.
So that's interesting. Maybe Gary Nolan's going to go on Joe Rogan, first of all, right? Gary is completely highly credentialed, right? Everything Tucker's saying, I agree with. That would be great. Gary Nolan on Joe Rogan would be an amazing episode. Let's be real. That would be amazing. And why Joe hasn't had him on is interesting. I do find that fascinating that he hasn't had Gary Nolan on. There's a few people that I'm just, like Lou Elizondo. That whole time Lou Elizondo did not go on Joe Rogan, that whole time, he's got to go on there now, right? But Gary Nolan would be a great get for sure. But I'm curious why Tucker didn't bring up Lou Elizondo's name. Do you see what I'm saying? But Gary's, he's openly talking about. And remember, Gary Nolan has vetted blocked on Twitter. So maybe that'll get unblocked one day. But so Gary knows who vetted is and doesn't like us. But I still like Gary, right? I zero problems with him. Again, that's a whole debacle of how that happened. Nothing we did. We reported on something Gary said or allegedly had said from somebody else, and we got blocked. Again, hopefully that'll be undone one day. Because again, I've never tagged Gary in a post. I don't even comment on his post. Nothing. I never interacted with him on Twitter. But if he went on Joe Rogan, that would just be epic episode, man. I definitely would love to see that. So, yeah, let's continue.
And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having.
So, interesting. He's been, doing this for 10 years with military members who have interactions with these objects. So he's saying that Dr. Gary Nolan, for the last 10 years, has been studying U.S. military members who have had interactions with UFOs. How many bombs is Tucker Carlson dropping in this interview? I'll be honest, a lot of those tidbits have been out there for a long time about Gary Nolan, but not put that way. I've never heard that statement like that. He got approached about the Havana Syndrome stuff, and that's kind of what got him in with the CIA, supposedly, right? I don't know. Just saying. But there was never any determination it was these objects and that he had done other, military members. Is it just that case, or is Tucker finally, sort of insinuating for Gary Nolan that, again, he's saying for the last 10 years, multiple, military service members. So what other events are we talking about? Is Dr. Gary Nolan sort of the military's, or these UFO programs? Is he like the doctor they send, people to when they have, an interaction with one of these objects and have some sort of physical effect? They get studied by Dr. Gary Nolan. Is that, as part of the machine as far as reverse engineering, crash retrieval, medical, right? I mean, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Again, considering the stature of Dr. Gary Nolan, right? That is quite fascinating that Tucker puts it that way. Let's be real.
Contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know, because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And
well, he's saying, so Joe has talked to Gary, not on the show, but I guess he's had a personal conversation with him. That's interesting. Maybe at a dinner over the phone. So maybe Gary was going to be a guest. Maybe that has almost happened.
It's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people...
It's not exactly radiation. At least that's how he told Tucker, right? That's what Tucker's saying. So Dr. Gary Nolan is saying it's not really a radiation. Something is coming off of these objects and injuring military service members. Again, this is, like it's a regular thing and known, if that makes sense. Again, a lot of this stuff has been speculated, but is this speculation still? Because Tucker's saying it like Gary is saying it like it's a fact, right? Sort of that's sort of the implication. And then the last part, of course.
Died.
And let's see that again.
Me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
The point is, people have died. Who are these people? Who are these people that Tucker is talking about? Who has died? And he's sort of implying that, maybe, at least in my opinion, just because he's implying that Dr. Gary Nolan knows that and knows who died. Clearly, he would, and potentially even studied them. Dead service members who were killed by UFOs, right? Potentially Dr. Gary Nolan has studied them, the effects of that. I don't know. A lot of interesting things in this interview with Tucker Carlson, man, right? Some people were like, there was a conspiracy because it got released at 12 a.m. midnight Central Standard Time, and then pulled immediately after, and then released at the regular time at 12 p.m. And Joe Rogan tweeted out that's what it was, just a mistake. That's it. But people were like, Tucker said too much, so they pulled the episode. But that's not what happened. So anyway, very interesting episode in my opinion. I definitely, the first hour, that's how it starts. Just boom, right into UFOs and aliens for, almost an hour. It was great. So I learned a lot, to be honest with you. I think we need more people like Tucker talking, because they're having interactions with a lot of these people in the UFO community, some of the leaders, and they just will talk about it. They're transparent about it, right? They're just kind of open about what the conversations are, what's being talked about, and I like that. I like that a lot. So I hope they do more, and I appreciate Tucker for just being open about the conversations that he's having, for sure. So anyway, can't wait to read the comments. What's everybody going to say? Real quick, a little channel update, I guess, before we go. My interview with John Greenwald Jr., again, I brought it up earlier in the video, but please go check it out. Dropped yesterday. The reception was pretty good, honestly. I had a great time with him. I think a lot of you really enjoyed that episode. What am I saying? Actually, I heard a lot of good things about it. What am I saying? But there were some trolls in the live chat. Some people just demolishing John on Twitter, for just just dumb stuff, in my opinion, right? Insinuating somehow that part of the documents released that he got from FOIA of David Grushenaro, right? These signal messages that were part of it, these private messages, like, where did he get those? He couldn't have got them from FOIA. He's being set up, he's being used. It's like, oh gosh, guys. John explained in our interview, because I asked that too, of, well, these signal messages, that's weird. And he explained why it happens. So, you know what I mean? He explains that basically any correspondence you have with someone in government about government business, that no matter where the communication is or how it is done, it becomes, public record and can be FOIA'd, you can ask for, right? So just because you're using an encrypted messaging, thing, that can still be put into record. So, pretty self-explanatory. And then he tweeted out more so about rules and regulations and broke it down even more on his Twitter. So go check that out if you're confused about that. But by no means did John get those illegally, like people were trying to insinuate, or fed that and then added it to the document. I mean, they gave him all that. And that's what he posted. He's the messenger, y'all. And people are shooting the messenger. I just don't understand it. It's interesting. I don't understand the need to get someone to believe what you believe so that it strengthens your belief. If your belief is strong enough, like how you feel about it, you don't need other people to believe it. What do you care? He releases the documents. You do with them what you want. Think about how why are you attacking him? Personal attacks. It's under the belt, in my opinion. Unnecessary, unproductive, disrespectful, and hypocritical in a lot of ways, because you should be spending your time doing other things, And I don't get involved on Twitter, maybe I could have jumped in and thrown some tweets around, try to defend John in some way, but it's like, then it just opens a can of worms. Right. And again, I just don't comment on Twitter, y'all. I just don't get in there and I just don't do it. I don't care, but it did pain me to see John, and no one referencing that he spoke about that in our interview. Right. Like, he explained it in our interview, but there are some people in the UFO Twitter community that hate vetted so much, they refuse to cover anything we do because they hate us so much and they want us to go away. I promise you. And it's weird. It's so strange. It is a strange little community sometimes, man. But we are thriving. We are pushing past all that because there's far more people that just want, to know what's going on, receive the information, and they'll decide what to do with it. Right? And are here for civil, respectful discourse about the topic. So that's what Vetted is about. So anyway, but I did feel bad for John. He just doesn't deserve that. And yeah, so I wanted to help clarify that for him. He totally explained all that. He's not doing anything nefarious. And to suggest that is a little disingenuous, in my opinion, without any real proof. Just because you don't like the guy, you're going to insinuate that he's doing this like illegal, nefarious, treasonous activity. That's what they're accusing him of. It's kind of ludicrous, but whatever. He didn't. I really enjoyed that interview, so check it out. It's on the YouTube channel. Again, link in the description. And I got more interviews coming up next week that y'all are not going to believe. That is for sure, man. Not going to say anything, but look for a surprise drop next week of an interview and more. Just a lot of great stuff happening. So anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, every day is a gift. 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Peace.